Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Sharlee Dixon. My guest today is Dr. Majid Fotuhi. Dr. Fotuhi is a pioneering neurologist and neuroscientist with more than 35 years of experience in brain health, memory, neuroplasticity, and the prevention of Alzheimer's disease. He earned his PhD in neuroscience from Johns Hopkins, completed medical training at Harvard Medical School, and returned to Johns Hopkins for his neurology residency, where he now serves as an adjunct professor. Dr. Fotuhi is known for translating complex brain science into practical tools, and his award-winning work has helped thousands improve memory, focus, and clarity. His expertise has been featured on CNN, NBC News, The Today Show, New York Times, The Washington Post, and more. And he's the author of the new book, The Invincible Brain, the clinically proven plan to age-proof your brain and stay sharp for life. In this episode, we'll discuss how the brain can be strengthened and even rejuvenated at any age, sharing the science behind his 12-week program and the practical habits, movement, food, mindset, stress control, purpose, and even boredom that help prevent cognitive decline and keep your mind sharp for life. Majid, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Looking forward to it.
It's my pleasure to be on your show. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So as we get started today, what brought you into studying the brain, aging, and cognitive performance in the first place? I know you've got over 30 years of experience. So what brought you here and has kept you going in this field?
I became interested in brain when I was a kid. My father used to talk to me about how there is no limit in what our brain can do. He told me the story of a child who was born without arms, and she had learned out of necessity to paint with holding brushes in between her toes and do the painting. She could also open and close doors. She could cook. And he said, look, that part of her brain that usually would not be active is so much more active now. And so the brain can do so many things beyond what you think is impossible. So I became interested as a kid. And when I was 14 years old, I wrote a book actually about how to become successful in life, emphasizing how there's no limit in what our brain can do. And then when I went to college, I took a course about these things and I fell in love with the brain even more. Like, why do we do what we do? You see a lot of patients with psychiatric issues, but why? What is it about their brain that makes them obsess about something or makes them think differently and so on? So I just find that fascinating. And when I was in medical school at Harvard, I studied more about the brain. And I decided I want to become a neurologist. And when I did my residency in neurology at Johns Hopkins, I became particularly interested in Alzheimer's disease and how we can prevent it.
Absolutely. And right before we got on the show, I know we were discussing how I'm connected to Alzheimer's. Many of our listeners already know I'm a social worker in a dialysis unit, and oftentimes I'm working with patients who have already been diagnosed or our staff is starting to see signs. And then on top of that, I'm 40 years old. My parents are aging. And so I'm just really curious about the brain. Is the longer that I am around people, I'm really starting to become curious about the brain and just like you, just how it functions. And so our talk today, I'm pretty excited about. And even more specifically, you've got a new book that's coming out called The Invincible Brain. What does invincible brain, what does that really mean in everyday life, not necessarily just in medicine?
Invincible means that your brain can be very resilient against the effects of aging. Your brain doesn't have to just decline as you get older. You can develop a resilient, invincible brain through lifestyle modifications. Actually, one of the things that made me very interested in Alzheimer's disease is when I was a neurologist at the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at Johns Hopkins, I saw many patients on dialysis units who were diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. However, the reason they have cognitive decline is not so much they have an Alzheimer's disease in their brain, it's because the metabolic changes that are usually associated with kidney failure, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, and many other conditions, can literally shrink the brain. So it's a mistake for us to call them as having Alzheimer's disease. They have a cognitive decline due to metabolic issues. and we should call it that. We should not call it Alzheimer's. And that's when I felt like, wait a minute, why are we putting a label on these people with a disease that seemingly has no cure while they have a condition that it can be prevented and treated successfully? And that's actually one of my areas of interest and how metabolic conditions can cause brain shrinkage.
That is so interesting, especially because, like I said, I work in dialysis. So my patients come to me either from, most of the time, diabetes, uncontrolled diabetes, or uncontrolled hypertension. And so I am seeing a lot of cognitive decline, as you say. And so it's quite interesting to me that there's a shrinking of their brain. That is kind of wild to me because, again, we've got a few few patients that have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's specifically, but I do wonder if it is cognitive
No.
decline versus Alzheimer's.
Yeah, I don't know those patients individually, but I can tell
Right.
you it's a mistake to call a lot of patients in a dialysis unit as having Alzheimer's disease. See,
Oh,
so much of the brain depends on blood flow.
yeah.
And the blood vessels that go to your toes, also some of the blood vessels go to the brain. And when diabetes patients don't take care of their diabetes, some of them they develop so much vascular disease in their feet that they have to get amputation.
Mhm.
And so the same thing happens the other way around, that the tips of the blood vessels in the brain are occluded and narrowed, and those parts of the brain don't get blood, and those parts of the brain don't work. This is one of the biggest things that our medical community does not fully appreciate, that things that affect the blood flow throughout the body, to the kidney, to the liver, to the heart, to our toes, also affect blood flow to the brain and can have profound effects on cognitive functions, which is the manifestation of the brain functioning or not functioning.
Wow, that is quite interesting. Again, I see this every day. So that is quite interesting. I'm definitely going to be doing some more research into that. But digging deeper into cognitive decline, you've mentioned that it can be prevented or maybe even reversed. I know that you have a 12-week program. Can you talk to us a bit about that program and what surprised you most when you first start seeing these things happening in your research?
After I completed my residency at Johns Hopkins in about 2002, I was really fascinated by how so many non-Alzheimer's issues cause brain shrinkage. And I, in fact, wrote a book called The Memory Cure. I wrote about 300 pages of all the things from vitamin deficiency, depression, obesity, diabetes, sedentary lifestyle, air pollution, hearing loss, vision loss, lung disease, heart disease, kidney disease, liver disease, all of those things were causing brain problems and nobody was talking about it. So I wrote a book about all those things. Then I realized, what if we take someone who has these issues and do a program of intensely treat all those issues? Let's say you take a 75-year-old retired, let's say, accountant who has been home a lot, has a little bit of diabetes, a little high blood pressure, doesn't move around, is isolated, it's not working anymore, so spend most of the time doing nothing at home, and has developed cognitive decline, and the family believes this is the early stages of Alzheimer's because he repeats himself a lot. Let's take that person and go through all the checklist of all the things that shrink their brain, and also go through all the things that can potentially improve the brain function, things like exercise, diet, stress management, and all those things, and see what happens. Will they actually turn around in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 2 years? And in 2012, I did just that. I put together a program to do that, and I started seeing patients such as this accountant I just told you. And what I saw was that when we addressed their medical conditions aggressively, when we tightly controlled their diabetes, when we put them on an exercise program, when we corrected their vitamin deficiency, when we managed their depression, they blossomed. They didn't just get less worse, which was what I thought would happen. I thought
Yeah.
that instead of going from a score from, let's say, hypothetically from 1 to 10, instead of going from 6 to 5, they go from 6 to 5.5. They wouldn't go down as fast. But to my surprise, they actually improved. And not only that, I thought it would take 9 months or 6 months to get better. They got better in 3 months. So then I provided that program for other elderly with this condition called mild cognitive impairment, a stage between normal and Alzheimer's disease. 84% of patients improved. Not that they got less worse, they actually improved. And
Wow.
to have some objective information above and beyond the fact that they had better scores on cognitive tests, I did brain MRIs on them at baseline and in 12 weeks. And more than half of them increased the size of the part of the brain for memory called hippocampus by 1 to 3%. These old individuals who had cognitive decline and thought they're going to get Alzheimer's disease and they're going to have a miserable life, they became more energetic, they become more engaged, they did better on the cognitive test, and their hippocampus, the part of brain for memory, increased the volume. In fact, one thing I never forget is that one day I got a call from a radiologist. He said, Dr. Fotuhi, I've been seeing a lot of your patients, and it seems like the size of the hippocampus in these patients is going up. What are you doing? What are you doing in your clinic that I've never seen before for people to increase the size of the hippocampus? What's going on there? And I said, well, actually, we have this program and it works. And thank you for seeing my patients. And if you're interested, send somebody and I'll do that for your patients too. I put together all the results from 129 patients I saw, and I published my first article in the Journal of Prevention of Alzheimer's Disease about this program in 2016. Then I started to provide this program for other patients with brain fog, concussion symptoms, or ADHD, and I saw similar results for any patient who had cognitive deficits. Because what we did was to increase blood flow to the brain, reduce inflammation in the brain, and improve the natural cleaning and rinsing that happens in the brain. Those three mechanisms can improve any brain, regardless of what was the initial cause of the deficits. And so I published another article in Journal of Rehabilitation and another article in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease Report, where we compared three groups of patients, those with memory loss, those with ADHD, and those with persistent concussion symptoms, to see which group improved the best with this 12-week program. And what we saw that in all three groups, more than 80% of patients had a statistically significant improvement in the cognitive scores. And that's really was interesting to me because I thought that memory patients would improve more than, let's say, ADHD patients, because memory patients had more medical issues. This program worked well, and our office was packed. You know, I had 25 brain coaches who would see patients to help them with lifestyle coaching and what I call 5 pillars of brain health. And our office was open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. And our schedule was 100% full, not 99%, 100%. There was not a little spot for these 25 brain coaches. We had shift working, like we had morning shift, evening shift for these brain coaches to see all the patients. This is when I just realized this program is too good to be just available for a small group of patients in Washington, D.C. area. And that's when I decided to write a book and start talking about it in public and media for everyone to benefit.
Wow, I am just fascinated at the research that you're doing. So not just for the health and well-being of our aging population, but for lots of others that are struggling on a daily basis with any other things, like you said, mentioned ADHD or any other cognitive impairments. It's quite impressive, the work that you're doing to improve the health of so many. So thank you for that.
I love that. I love it because people will come to me and they couldn't believe how much better they have become with the program. Many of my patients who started program, I would tell them, Miss Smith, I'm telling you, you will get better in 12 weeks. And she would say, hon, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't remember what I had for lunch. You think I'm going to memorize anything? And I say, please, trust me, you're going to memorize 100 words. No, hon, I'm not going to do that. I said, you will. I said, no, I won't. I said, listen, you will. And then 6 weeks, not 12 weeks, 6 weeks later, when they came for a mid-program follow-up, they had memorized 100 words, forward and backwards. If you're interested, I can show you how to do it yourself.
Yeah. I definitely am. I started reading your book. I didn't quite get finished and get to all of this, but it's even more empowering to hear about it directly from you.
Sure. Yeah.
You're
In
passionate
one of
about
the
it.
chapters in the book, I actually show the skills, the tricks of how to do it. There's a little, I don't like the word trick because it's not like a magician. It's a skill that you can use to memorize long lists of words.
Very nice. Very nice. And so just a little bit ago, you mentioned your 5 pillars of brain health. So I know what they are: fitness, sleep, nutrition, mindset, and brain training. Can you talk to us about those 5 pillars and why do us as regular humans, why do we underestimate them the most? And why do we do that?
As I reviewed the literature, I must have read thousands of papers in the past 30 years about all the things that can affect the brain for better or for worse. And I decided, based on all the things I read, those 5 things you just mentioned are the 5 most important things for brain health. And each of them changes the physiology of the brain. For example, fitness increases blood flow in the brain, increases the number of mitochondria, which are the energy producing organelles inside the cells. So when you exercise more, yeah, your neurons have more energy. It also increases levels of a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is like a fertilizer for the brain. And as a result, when you exercise more, your brain is healthier, it has more blood flow, has more mitochondria, has more energy, it works better. When you sleep, your brain goes through a natural cleaning and rinsing process, especially during deep sleep. So when you don't get enough deep sleep, you deprive your brain of this waste management system. And as a result, some of this waste accumulates in the brain. And when you sleep well, you can reverse that. Sleep apnea is a major risk factor for
Mhm.
cognitive decline as well as for stroke and heart attacks. So when your sleep apnea is treated, your hippocampus grows back. The hippocampus, the memory part of the brain, is the size of your thumb. You have one on the right, one on the left. The size of the hippocampus determines how well you remember things, and it's the part of the brain that shrinks with aging and with Alzheimer's disease. When somebody has sleep apnea, hippocampus shrinks. When you treat their sleep apnea with CPAP machine, it grows back in 3 months. There's a lot of malleability in hippocampus, a lot of things that shrink it, a lot of other things can grow it. And exercise increases the size of hippocampus. Optimal sleep is associated with larger hippocampus. Nutrition is important. Mediterranean diet is really good for brain health. People who eat a Mediterranean diet on a regular basis for years and years, if you look at their brain after they pass away, they will have a brain that's up to 18 years younger compared to older adults who did not eat a Mediterranean diet. So a Mediterranean diet, which is high in fruits and vegetables and minimal to no junk food, is really good for the brain. One of the most important things is stress. Stress increases cortisol levels. Cortisol is like a poison for hippocampus. If you just spray cortisol on a hippocampus, it literally shrinks. Not so much other parts of the brain. Hippocampus is particularly vulnerable to the levels of cortisol, which if you stress all the time, you have high cortisol levels pretty much most of the time. And people who have chronic high stress have smaller size hippocampus. Things like meditation, slow breathing exercises can reverse a lot of that. And finally, brain training is really critical. Your brain is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. So whether you use brain games or whether you take dance classes or whether you learn a new hobby, whether you take classes to play golf better, tennis better, whether you take a calligraphy class or a painting class or a crochet class, anything you do that requires thinking, maintaining attention and learning improves the corresponding parts of the brain. So there's no one magic brain game that's really good for you. Things that are good for you are the things that challenge your brain.
I read about brain training. My first thought was, does that count for people play those brain games on their phone and things like that? So, is there a better brain game to play, or just like you mentioned, any activity that you do that requires using your brain? Are they all equal, or is there one better than the others?
I think you should do things you enjoy. You shouldn't do brain games like a chore that you have to do in order to maintain your brain health. There's so many things you enjoy doing. As long as you learn something in the process, whether it's a book club, whether it's traveling to somewhere new and learning about the new place that you went to, every time you're paying attention, you're a little puzzled what's going on and you figure it out, that's when your brain is stretching. You know, when you go to the gym and you do heavy weights and you feel the pain, they say no pain, no gain. The same applies to your brain. When you feel a little frustrated, well, you're just trying and it's not happening, that's when you're forming new synapses. That's when your brain is growing. If you're playing the same card game you played 1,000 times, then that doesn't count as brain stimulation because you're doing the
Okay.
same old, same old.
Mm-hmm.
I recommend doing things in social gatherings, like play a new card game like Mahjong or something with friends, or take a class with your friends, or take a Zumba class. You're learning something and you're moving your body at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you don't have time for any of that and you just want to do intense brain training, there are so many apps you can use. Lumosity, Brain HQ, Elevate, Peak are some examples of apps that offer a lot of free brain games that you can use if you don't want to pay for anything. And if you liked it, I guess you can get subscription later. However, focus on brain activities that are fun. Any hobby that's challenging is going to be good. I like
Okay.
photography, for example. So I've been thinking of taking a photography class. So that will count as brain training.
Very nice. It's interesting as I age. I'm a mom. I've got 2 sons, married. I'm a social worker during the day, and I find that I don't really have many hobbies. And so I'm starting to gather some. And so this gives me some push to find some new things to enjoy.
Yeah, I think one thing you can consider is what is it that you and your kids and spouse
Mhm.
would love to do?
Yeah.
For example, I have 2 daughters in college, and when they come home, play card games. And of
Mhm.
course, they're better than I am because they're teenagers. I mean, they're 20s, they're much faster. But I try. And 2 out of 10, I win. 8 out of 10, they win. But still,
Still though.
we're all having fun with it. And that's the other thing. You want to do things that are fun. You don't want to make it a pain to do them. You want to find fun things to do, ideally as a group, because that way you're socializing, you're having fun, and you're learning something new.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Whether you're a longtime or first-time listener to Behavioral Health Today, you're probably familiar with Triad, the company that brings you this podcast. But you may not know that Triad also hosts a community for current and aspiring behavioral and mental health professionals, featuring trending content and education and career resources, all for free. If you are a behavioral or mental health professional, or you're studying to become one, join more than 80,000 people on Triad by claiming your free professional account today. Visit us at hellotriad.com/BHT. That's hellotriad.com/BHT and join the Triad community today.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so you mentioned nutrition, and I know in America that is a difficult thing to find the best way to eat. So thank you for the suggestion about the Mediterranean diet. But what are the best foods to eat? Number one, brain food that people are not eating enough of. And what are some simple swaps that people can make to help brain performance? I know there's so much out there about change your dieting, your food or your diet to this, or you should cut out your carbs, don't eat any, go be keto or cut this out. So there's so many things that we're bombarded with on a daily basis. So what do you feel like is the best thing for us to do? It's some simple swaps to that people can make.
The best thing to do is don't eat junk food. And fortunately, we're surrounded with junk food.
Mm-hmm.
You go to a ball game, every piece of food is bad.
Yeah.
All those sausages and hot dogs and hamburgers are not food. They really are not food. They're chemicals that have been packaged and some spices were added to have taste. And
Yeah.
most fast food restaurants offer horrible options, horrible options. When I go to a train station, I have to look around just to look at people's eating to see which of the food is less bad. Unfortunately, we're surrounded with bad food all around us, but there are 3 things that are really bad. Highly processed food, things that are in boxes and clearly is far removed from fruits and vegetables. Things that are high in trans fats and things that spike your sugar level, things that increase your sugar level quickly, things like donuts and cookies and candies and sodas, muffins, things that increase the sugar level quickly, increase insulin levels quickly, and that eventually leads to insulin resistance, which then leads to diabetes, which is a major brain shrinker if it's not controlled. So step number one is please, please don't eat junk food, period. If you can't do that, cut it by 50%.
Okay.
To me, junk food is like smoking. It's really bad for you. And the problem is that, for example, when you eat sugary food, it increases your insulin level quickly. Then too much sugar goes inside the cells and you become hypoglycemic. Your sugar level actually drops low, which then makes you hungry, which then you have craving for sugar, which then you have a soda, which then increases your insulin level. The sugar levels become too low. Then you're hungry again. Then you eat
Cycle.
more, like you have a cookie because you feel tired. The cookie spikes your sugar level. You feel fine for a few minutes, but then you get low sugar level again. You're drowsy again. So throughout the day, you have 6 snacks, and they're really ruining your brain, not to mention your liver and your kidney and everything else, your skin. So step number one, please, as much as possible, don't touch that. Like, since I've learned about how bad this food affect the brain, I haven't eaten a single donut. If there's a cookie that I must eat, like a chocolate chip cookie that looks just delicious, I'll have a small piece. I'm not going to eat the whole thing. And if I love blueberry muffins, I'll have a little bit. And I say like a beautiful bowl of ice cream, I'll have 1 or 2 spoons. I will never touch French fries. Well, maybe I'll have 1, not the whole bag. And if it's a bag of chips, I'll have just 1, 2 little pieces, just for a taste, just to urge my craving for those things. I would never sit down to eat a whole bag of chips or 2, 3 cookies, or never a donut. And I think if you do that, then I'm happy. Every time you can swap anything of the things I mentioned, blueberry is one of the best food for the brain. Blueberries are high in antioxidants, and they're among very few fruits that actually increase BDNF levels. So if you can have a bowl of blueberries in the fridge, and if you have a craving for something, just have a bowl of blueberries, or grapes, or orange, or any other fruits and vegetables that you can have. And in general, it's a good idea to have a bowl of fruits on a kitchen table. And don't buy junk food to put in the pantry. Don't buy cheap cookies that you buy. They're cheap because it's not food. We can't call those things food. There are a bunch of chemicals, highly processed food that are put together with some spices on top. So don't bring them to the house in the first place. And if you have that pantry, throw it in the garbage. Don't even bother finishing it and say, don't buy it again. Just throw it in the garbage. I feel horrible that the food that are like toxic to our bodies are so cheap, and people out of necessity buy cheaper options, which are horrible for their brain. It's a lot cheaper to have a hamburger and a bag of chips and a soda than 2 pounds of grapes. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it really is. I actually was in the grocery store before our blizzard, I'm going to call it. And the amount, like you just mentioned, the price per pound of grapes is almost the same as the chips. Actually, the chips were a little cheaper for the same weight of items. And so it is very hard to make those choices, especially if it's just a financial decision. Like, this is the amount of money that I have, especially these days with inflation and just the rising cost of everything. You want your money to go as far as it can. And so having to make those tough choices in the grocery store or in the restaurants or fast food places, it is a source of stress almost for a lot of Americans, maybe people worldwide as well.
Yeah. And one problem is that when you eat those poorly prepared food, such as cookies or other things, they actually make you eat them more.
Mm-hmm.
You become addicted to them. You know,
Yeah.
there's the food and there's a taste of the food, right? So if you have like a piece of fried chicken, which is really not chicken, but it's fried and have those spices, there are two things: the food content, or whatever it is, call it food, and the spices. People eat food mostly for the taste of it and not necessarily for the content. Now, although you want to have nutritious food, but most of the time you pick food that are tastier. And so what these companies do is that they add flavors that make whatever they had taste good. Even though the content is horrible, it tastes good. And sometimes that taste becomes addictive. It has sugar in it or it really tastes good. So you're eating it over and over again, not because it's nutritious for you, but because the taste has been added, and that's what you're addicted to. And you eat more, you gain weight, and now you have to deal with the problems of being overweight.
Right. And those health issues that come along with all of that. And one of your 5 pillars is mindset as well. And so I mentioned earlier about how just making those financial choices that are needed on a daily basis, especially when buying food, can cause a lot of stress as well. And so I'm curious to know more about the effect of stress on our brains and if there's any way quick way anyway, to calm our brains during those times of stress, because I know that has a direct impact on our brain health as well.
As you know, Sharlee, being a social worker, so much of the stress we experience is self-generated. We create our own worries. It's our brain that creates the worry about what may or may not happen in the future. And unfortunately, some people are more prone to have repetitive negative thoughts more than others, and they get consumed in these thoughts and anxiety that it generates. I find it interesting that we create our stress most of the time. It's true that when somebody has financial problems and somebody has a family member who has autism or cancer, those are really stressful. You can't say you created it in your mind. But what you worry about, my teenager's not studying now, he will never get to a good college and his future is ruined. I mean, it's not a good thing that your teenager's not studying, but to take it all the way far and to think that he ends up working a low-level job and his future is totally ruined is a little exaggerated. People figure out that things eventually. So you need to sort of adjust your stress levels based on actual things that are happening, not perceived problems in the future. I find that is the key to reducing your stress. Cognitive behavior therapy is one of the most effective ways to reduce stress. Now, there are things that can help now. Cognitive behavior therapy, as you know, takes 8 sessions, 10 sessions. It's not going to be quick. And I think more than 50% of people respond, but there are people who actually continue to have those negative thoughts. I refer so many of my patients to the social workers in our team for cognitive behavior therapy. However, the other things that we did for our patients were breathing exercises. If you do slow breathing exercises, like you breathe in with the count of 6, hold for the count of 3, and breathe out for the count of 6, and you do that for 5 minutes, that alone calms the mind. Because what you do when you do slow breathing is that you increase the activity of the parasympathetic nervous system. In your body, there's a sympathetic, like a stress response, and a parasympathetic, relax and calm response. And when you do exercises such as breathing slowly for even 5 minutes, you improve the activity of the parasympathetic nervous system and you quiet your stress sympathetic nervous system. And that activity, when it goes to the brain, it sets the tone in the brain at a calmer level. And that's what calms the brain. Actually, it also increases blood flow to the brain. As such, slow breathing exercises are really helpful for quickly reducing your stress levels. What's fascinating is that research has shown people who perform these slow breathing exercises in the absence of anything else actually reduce the footprints of Alzheimer's disease in the brain. Now, that is interesting. There are times I read something which I say, no, that can't be true. Like, what does breathing slowly has to do with reducing amyloid levels in the brain? But a randomized control study showed just that people who did slow breathing exercises had reduced the amount of amyloid in the brain. Meditation has long been known to increase the size of the hippocampus, increase blood flow to the brain, increase the strength of the connections in the brain. We know meditation is particularly good for the brain. What the research has shown now is that even the slow breathing without the mantra, without the transcendental meditation, just breathing alone seems to have powerful benefits for the brain.
Wow. Interesting. That is
Very
quite
interesting.
interesting. Yeah. Hmm. And I guess it makes complete sense though, because I know when I am feeling really anxious and stressed and just frustrated, I notice that I'm not breathing very much.
Mm.
And when I've taken a moment to like, okay, I need to breathe, pull out my box breathing, practice some things that I've learned in therapy, I do think a bit clearer. My mind is a bit more focused. I can really think about what the issue really is, not what I think it should be or what it may turn into later on. That is quite interesting.
You're absolutely right. When you are sympathetic driven, you just look in front of you.
Yeah.
The sympathetic nervous system is made to fight or flight. You just get out of the problem. You do something quick. You just go like this. Whereas if you're in parasympathetic mode, you just think of the big picture. What am I doing and what needs to be done? And the creative solution comes to mind. And therefore, if you're stressed out, instead of just doing the same thing, and as you said, people breathe faster without realizing, is that you're not really pursuing the best solution necessarily. You're just getting there the fastest. And it's often better pause and decide, what if I do nothing at all? And sometimes you're running a lot and you just feel like you have to run. But the best option is just do nothing. And doing nothing a lot of times is actually the best solution. You preserve energy. You don't engage in a conversation that could be stressful in the first place. You don't do anything. And doing nothing is the best solution. But you need to have that parasympathetic state of mind, that calm, collected state of mind to make that decision. Whereas if you're rushed, you're sympathetic, somebody sends you an email, you respond a nasty email back. And that creates more problem. And then you go talk to somebody else, and then you come two of you, and if somebody noticed that you didn't do your job right, and now somebody else is reporting you, and now you have conflict with the boss, and you now can't sleep at night because you have to go see the boss the next day. Whereas these things could have all prevented if you had
If you
just
took a second.
deleted the email or responded saying, thank you for your comments. So this is where the connection between the body and the brain. See, most people don't appreciate your body and your brain are so tightly connected. If your body organs, your kidney, your liver, your heart, your skin, your muscles are healthy, they provide hormones and increase blood flow to the brain, and your brain is healthy. And when they're not doing well, it affects your brain. And it goes the other way too. When your brain is healthy, you make better decisions, which then protects your body. So if you make better decisions, for example, you don't spike your blood pressure. See, high blood pressure is a risk factor for heart attacks. But what increases high blood pressure a lot of times is because people are worrying and find themselves stressful situation, which then affects the heart, which then they develop a heart attack. So it's a two-way connection. And what you need to do is start a point with your head and say, you know what? I'm not going to stress about things. I'm going to only stress about things that are worthy of my hippocampus getting ruined. Because when you stress something, you're killing your hippocampus with cortisol. We don't want that. So if something happens to you and gets you frustrated, ask yourself, is this really worth my hippocampus? Now, sometimes I'm driving in a quiet neighborhood and it's a stop sign, and I'm taking my time to take a left, and somebody's honking the horn. And I'm thinking, really? Really? And of course, I'm not going to get stressed out because the person behind me must be stressed out about something.
Right.
And I feel bad because their hippocampus is getting damaged, but I'm not going to let the honking of their horn affect my hippocampus. I'm going to stay calm and cool. I'm just going to continue with my own pace. And I'm not going to let that affect me, as opposed to like yelling at them or try to cut them further on or do other things that are totally unnecessary. A lot of times doing nothing is the best solution.
Nice. Interesting. Okay. Thank you. And something you were mentioning earlier about your accountant's patient and how he was retired. And so, as we've been talking about all this, it really has me starting to think the more I talk to people who are retired, retiring, they start to lose, I guess, a sense of purpose, that there is something that they should be doing. They have places to be, people that rely on them, they are using their brains. And so, I'm wondering if there is any connection to feeling like you have a purpose in life and in this world to how your brain functions.
Yes, absolutely. I wrote a whole chapter about the importance of having a sense of purpose and the brain in my book, because I think it's one of those important things that can determine your brain health without you doing anything. See, when you're exercising, you actually have to put effort to do things. When you see a kind of food that you know is not good for you, but it tastes good, you're putting an effort not to eat it. You're actually making an effort. But there are things that are effortless and can make a difference in your brain. And one of them is having a sense of purpose in life, which means, what is it that you find meaningful about your life? What do you feel passionate about your life? We all have something different that excites us. For example, I love to talk about preventing Alzheimer's disease to audiences. It gives me pleasure to make a difference in the lives of thousands of people. That makes me feel good. Now, do I really care about the interest rate going up and down and the economy is going up and down? Yes, of course. But is that what makes me excited to realize that interest rate is going up or down next month? Or for some people, faith is important. They have a strong belief in God. And that's a beautiful passion to have, because you feel you're getting closer to God. And that's great. It gives you meaning in life. It's probably one of the most important, meaningful you can have. Others love their grandchildren or their children. They die for the kids. And their purpose in life is to make sure these little monkeys grow up to be successful adults, and they will be helping the world in their own ways. So we all have something that gets us excited. And interestingly, it's not the same thing. If you go to a room with 10 people, each of them has a different sense of purpose in life. What's important is, though, to have some sense of purpose in life. There may be many people who have a 9-to-5 job and they have 2 kids and a spouse, and they go through the motion. They go to work, they take care of the job. On the way home, they pick up the kids, they do the grocery shopping, they go home, prepare a meal, feed the kids, put the kids to sleep, and then crash, and then redo the whole thing again. If you ask them what's sense of purpose in life, they say, well, I don't have time for that. I have to pay my mortgage, or I have to pay for my bills, or I have to take it. My parents were frail and I need to take care of them. What purpose? No. You need to really spend an hour by yourself, ideally in a quiet place, and ask yourself, what do I love about my life? What do I really want to accomplish in my life? What would you want people to say after you passed away? Let's say there is a memorial and there's one say eulogy about you. What do you want people to say about you? This is how to find out your sense of purpose in life. And then set a goal for yourself in 5 years, 10 years, whatever, to do more of the things that are in line with your sense of purpose in life. And if you can't quit your job and you don't have the degree or whatever else required to have this other job, then carve out periods during your days or your weekends where you do the things that you sense that are in line with your sense of purpose in life. Now, why is that important? It's important because research has shown that people who have a higher sense of purpose in life are less likely to get Alzheimer's disease. they're less likely to have insomnia. They're 50% less likely to get strokes. They're 19% less likely to get heart attacks. In general, they live longer. I give a 1-hour lecture to my students at Johns Hopkins about the benefits of having a sense of purpose for the brain. It's amazing how many studies have shown that having a sense of purpose in life, not doing anything, but just having something in your mind that says, I find this meaningful and I'm going to do something toward that goal. We think that it may be because that state of mind makes you feel happier about yourself, so it reduces cortisol level. Maybe that state of mind relaxes your whole body and you're more in a parasympathetic mode, and that's why it helps you. We don't know the exact biology of how a sense of purpose in life reduces your risk of strokes by 50%. It's not like people with a sense of purpose are exercising more or not eating junk food. You correct for those things. You try to take groups of people. For example, you take 2 groups of people, you do MRIs on the brain, and you measure how many plaques and tangles, which are the footprints of Alzheimer's disease in the brain, in 2 groups of people. Then they do questionnaires from 1 to 10, how much sense of purpose they have. And so there's a bunch of questions they answer, and then there's a score. Some people have a high sense of purpose in life. Some people have a low sense of purpose in life. So then you have 2 groups of people with the same load of pathology in the brain, some with high sense of purpose and some with low. Then you do cognitive testing on both groups to see how well the brain is working. And people who have the same load of Alzheimer's disease with the highest sense of purpose in life perform better in cognitive tests. They actually have better memory. Even though they have Alzheimer's like the other group, they perform much better in memory tests. So there is something powerful about having a sense of purpose in life. And if you do things that are in line with what you find meaningful, your brain benefits, your heart benefits, and you're healthier overall.
Interesting. Okay. That's really nice. And I guess to dig even deeper to that, how much does someone feeling loss of purpose? So you mentioned someone's purpose may be whatever career choice they may have chosen or being the best parent they can be. Does the life cycle of those relationships and losing them, how does that affect someone's brain then?
Exactly. Because if you have a job and you love your job, let's say you're working in an office and you're helping people. Let's say you're a social worker and you love what you do. So many people come to you, they're about to commit suicide, they're frustrated, they're going to get divorced, they're not enjoying life. You spend 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week for 6 weeks, and they're so much happier. And that gives you pleasure. That gives you reward. And if you stop working, and now what do you do? What you need to do is to find a replacement for the job you had. For example, you can go to church and join a community in a church.
Okay.
Or you can start a nonprofit organization. You need to do something. Your brain is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And when you don't use it, it shrinks and becomes frail. And therefore, I think it's important for you to do something after you retire. I think that many people have passions that are outside their career. And for them, this is a great opportunity to, now that they don't have a 9-to-5 job, go do the things they really wanted to do. And they get creative to improve and do more of the things they enjoy doing.
Okay. Makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. And so I just have one more question because I feel like I could probably talk to you for hours. So these days, with the amount of technology that we walk around with in our hands, with our phones and apps and the internet and just the access that we have to so many different things, in the world of this constant scrolling stimulation, what effect does that have on our brain? Is it helping our brains to grow because they're constantly moving, or how does that work?
Using social media, spending time on your phone is one of the worst things you could do for yourself. Because for one thing, if you're spending time on your phone, you're not moving your body. I feel horrible that teenagers these days spend 6, 8, or 10 hours a day on their screen. On those hours that they're looking at the screen, they're not walking or jogging or doing anything. They're just glued stationary and they're looking at the screen. That alone, the fact that they're not moving, is bad for them. Also, there is really no stimulation. It's a passive flow of information that's coming and going. Some is funny, some is not funny. The thing you need to do is to learn something new. If you must look at your phone, maybe you can pick up an app on how to get better at memorizing names. Or maybe you can get an app on improving your vocabulary, or you can do an app on doing Sudoku, or something that actually stimulates your brain. What's good for the brain is a challenge. Looking at social media is passive. It's non-engaging. It's only engaging because something funny may show, or there may be a quote that is meaningful or nice. But most of it is junk. Most of it is random things that you didn't necessarily choose. I mean, you pick areas that you're interested, so you get a lot of videos in your particular area of interest. But this is passive exposure to a lot of random information. And I think you should set a limit. If you must look at your phone, set a limit on your phone, 15 minutes with an alarm. Yeah, 15 minutes to go on Instagram or TikTok. Just enjoy yourself. But 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes max. Don't spend 3 hours on your phone, because on those 3 hours, you totally wasted your time. And if you want to have a healthy brain as you grow older, you need to have healthy habits for the brain. See, you take care of your teeth. You brush twice a day, you floss, you use mouthwash, you see a dentist 2 or 3 times a year. There are certain things you do that are important for brain health. And because they're incorporated in your daily life, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
Now, those 5 pillars of brain health are the kind of things that are going to keep your brain healthy. And you want to incorporate those 5 things in your day-to-day life. So when you say junk food, don't even look at it. Don't even think of it as an option. If you have to go somewhere that you can walk or you can take the car, consider walking part of it. If something's stressing you out or you always walk around stressed out and angry, maybe it's a good time to pause and choose what things are worth ruining your campus for. Once you decide it's 5 pillars of brain health and build your life around it, then you don't have to think about it anymore. It becomes a part of routine. Now, 60, 50 years ago, people in their 70s and 80s had dentures. Having a set of artificial teeth was so routine, most older adults had it. Why? Because taking care of your teeth was not a part of everyone's daily routine. And as a result, people lost their teeth and they needed a whole set of dentures. These days, most adults are still using the teeth they had as they were kids. They may have some implant or some dental work, but fewer people have dentures. Same applies to your brain. There's no denture for the brain. You can't put a new brain. So if you're 20s, 30s, 40s, or any age, decide to set habits that will help make sure that when you get to your 70s and 80s, you don't need a brain denture of sort. Brain denture means you're demented, that your brain has shriveled. There's no artificially put brain there, so you're left with the brain half its original size. You don't know what year it is. You get confused with your kids around you. You may have behavioral problems. You may have a stroke and can't move half your body. A lot of bad things happen. Your brain is the most important organ you have by far.
Yeah.
And so if you take care of your brain, you're going to most of the time be happy, healthy, sharp. You're in the flow of things. You enjoy life. So don't do the things that have been clearly established as bad for the brain. And now you know it. When I saw patients,
Yeah.
some patient would come to me to say, I'm sorry, doc, I'm still smoking. and they had diabetes and high blood pressure, and they were not moving that much because they're tired all the time. If you have sleep apnea, you're tired all the time. And I would say, sir, listen to me. I'm telling you, you're at high risk of developing a stroke, which means it can happen tomorrow. As a result of stroke, you may lose your ability to speak. You may lose your ability to move half your body. Don't say nobody told you. I'm telling you. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Yes or no? If it's not clear, I can repeat myself. You are at a high risk of developing a stroke at any time. It could be tomorrow. It could be 2 years from now. But don't come to the emergency room with a stroke and say, I don't know what happened. Most people have a stroke, think that strokes happen to other people. Somehow they think that they have diabetes, they have obesity, they have high blood pressure, they don't exercise, they eat junk food all the time. And that's fine because they're busy. But strokes don't take into account that you're busy or not. Stroke happens when you have 6 risk factors. You have high cholesterol, you smoke, you have diabetes, you have obesity, you have a sedentary lifestyle, and those common risk factors that we've heard a lot. The more of them you have, the more likely it is for the blood vessels to narrow to the point of occluding and become a complete stroke, or being like 80% gone, which means your cognitive decline happens. So those of you who listen to this, now you've been warned. Don't say nobody told me. I just told you. If you have risk factors, it's a question of time. So please be smart about it and set a goal that you're going to make small changes in your day-to-day life. I don't want you to say, okay, starting tomorrow, I'm going to exercise 2 hours and I'm going to do everything, all that. No. Set a goal of doing a little bit every week. So in 1 week, you say, I'm going to cut the junk food by 50%. Like if there's a bag of chips that's totally useless, I shouldn't be eating it, but I'm addicted to it, so I'm going to have half of it. But I'm going to be proud of myself for not eating the other half.
The whole thing. Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to walk 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, just 5 minutes for 1 week. Maybe the next week I'll walk 10 minutes and then build on it. Build on it gradually, realizing that your brain will thank you for it. As a result of doing these things, your brain freshens up, and the brain that's freshened up functions better. You make better decisions, and it's the better decisions that ultimately determines your success. If you're doing the same old all the time, you will not make a leap in your career. Your success depends on thinking outside the box to do one thing that sets you apart from other people. And those aha moments, those moments of clarity when something hits you, oh my God, why don't we do that? Happens when your brain is healthy, not when your brain is inflamed and the blood flow is bad and the cleaning and rinsing hasn't happened, it's dirty. It's not a pretty place. So I think these are all things I talk about in my book. And I think when people read about it, and they have a list of 40 questions to determine what are the individual risk factors for any given person. And of those 40, 5 of them may apply to individual person. And that's the 5 things that they need to address, realizing that addressing those things can have meaningful improvement in their brain functions.
Nice. And so just to close us out today, for those listeners who want to start age-proofing their brain today, where can they learn more about you and your book, The Invincible Brain?
I am on several social media platforms. I just told you don't go there. But if you must go, you can look me up at Dr._Fotuhi on Instagram and LinkedIn. I put educational posts. I'm also putting together an app that people can use to assess their risk factors. And it's going to be a free app on my website. And it's drfotuhi.com. It's drfotuhi.com. And I know my last name is difficult. Most people forget. So if you search The Invincible Brain, a lot of the stuff I do comes up. I put a lot of free educational videos on YouTube. Most of the things I do are free. So it's my passion to help people So most of the things I do, other than buying the book, is free.
Nice. Thanks. Thank you so much, Dr. Fotuhi. I have personally learned so much just in our short session, and I look forward to not just reading The Invincible Brain, but working through the program and reading your other books as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate you speaking with us today.
My pleasure.
And thank you to our listeners for taking the time to join us. You can follow us on our social media at Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and more at Behavioral Health Today. And if you like our show, make sure to give us 5 stars and leave us a review. As always, the resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.